or we should be good to go. Sorry about that, Jolly.
No worries. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jolly Hatchett. Welcome to the Citizens Police Oversight Commission public meeting. Today is April the 4th. It is now 6:06 p.m. I will give the opening colloquy as we call this meeting to order. This CPOC Commissioner meeting is hereby called to order. The time is 6:06 p.m. My name is Jolly Hatchett. I am the chair of the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, and I will facilitate this meeting. So bear with me for the technical difficulties. You can blame me. This is a public meeting of the Citizens Police Oversight Commission that was properly advertised pursuant to the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act. At this time, I will ask that roll call be taken. Anthony, are you able to take roll call for us? I think he needs his needs to be unmuted.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Anthony.
All right, roll call. Jolly Hatchett,
Present.
Frosa Hussein.
All right, I am.
I see
I'm
her.
present.
Okay.
I'm here. It's sorry. It was just everybody was muted.
Benjamin Lerner,
Present.
Hassan Bennett,
Present.
John Solomon,
Present.
Elder Melanie Dubose. I know she's here.
She's
There
here.
we go.
She's
Yeah.
present.
Mary Ellis Santiago,
Present.
Rosaura Thomas,
Present.
Hakeem PA.
Present.
Chair, that's roll. All commissioners are present.
Anthony, thank you so very much. We will now move on to the first order of business, which will be the approval of the March public meeting minutes. We had a meeting in March. The minutes were previously circulated. Thank you so much for that, Danny. I hope that all the commissioners had an opportunity to review those meeting minutes. If you were not present at that meeting, please do not vote. But for those that were present at that meeting, if you have had an opportunity to review that, I will ask that someone make a motion to approve the minutes.
I move the approval of the minutes of the March meeting.
Thank you, Judge Lerner. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Hi.
Or wave or something for those that are technically muted. All right. Any opposed? Okay. The meeting minutes have been unanimously approved. Our next order of business is going to be community comment. I believe that there are at least a few community comments that have been registered in advance. Okay. I'm not sure in which order or who, if those individuals are present. If you have a community comment, if you can raise your hand or do something so that we can acknowledge you. Okay.
I have the order that they were submitted.
Okay.
If you want to call them in that order, or people can just raise their hands. But the first person who registered was Jonathan Border.
Is Jonathan on the line?
Jonathan Broder is ill tonight. He is unable to be here. So,
well, if you want to just stay unmuted, Gail, you're the next person.
okay.
Good evening,
All right.
Joe.
Good evening, everyone.
My name is. Sorry, I was going to say, if you want to introduce yourself and say what police district you're in, that would be awesome.
My name is Gail Lax, and I am a co-chair of Power Live Free and a member of the police accountability team that we have at Power Live Free. And we wanted to thank you for taking this public comment. Power Live Free has advocated for the CPOC from the beginning and would like it to succeed towards its goal of holding police actions accountable and transparent. I have some questions regarding the interim executive director position at CPOC, and these questions are actually for the commissioners, the CPOC commissioners, to answer. We have a number of questions, and if there's not time to respond to all of them today, we'll send them by email for the commissioners to give us a written response. So thank you. Power Live Free is concerned that Mr. Anthony Arachi, as the interim executive director, has taken on the role of the executive director when all focus and priority should be towards hiring the executive director first. In various CPOC meetings and town halls recently and in the past, Mr. Arachi has been introduced himself as the executive director of CPOC, not as the interim executive director. For example, why does he give an executive director report with no mention of his interim role? Our next question, how was Mr. Arachi named interim executive director of CPOC? Did he apply to this role? Was he appointed? And if so, by whom and when? As I mentioned, these are questions for the CPOC commissioners and not the CPOC staff.
Gail, thank you so much for your comments. And you actually reminded me, one thing that I'll read as far as the community comments are concerned, just so that everyone is aware, and it's also on our agenda, which is posted on the website. This is from the executive director, normally reads the community comment, but it would go something like this. Good evening. My name is Anthony Arachi. I serve as the interim executive director of Citizens Police Oversight Committee. Please state your name for the record. You did that for us, Gil. Says you will have 3 minutes to address the commissioners. Any documents or communications that you might supplement your comment with should be submitted to me. I will keep the time and notify the board when 3 minutes have elapsed. The commissioners may choose not to comment, question, or respond in any way to your public comment. Just so that anyone who has public comment is aware of that caveat. What I will say on behalf of the commissioners in terms of the search, as you mentioned, there is an executive director search that's going on, which I am a part of. We consider this, or at least, again, I'll speak for myself on behalf of the commission. I consider this kind of like building a house. You want to start with a solid foundation. You don't want to rush when you build a house. If you rush and build on a crappy foundation, chances are your house won't last that long. We're taking our time. We're being thorough. We received over 60 applicants for the position of executive director. So we're very close to that. And I guess I'll just skip down for a moment. The executive director search was, there were 5 finalists, and those initial round of interviews concluded last week. And so it's to be continued, but we are working diligently with getting that done, I can assure you. Again, as I mentioned with the agenda, Anthony is listed as interim executive director. I can't speak for any meetings where I'm not present, but I know anytime I correspond or deal with Anthony, it's on an interim basis. I don't think that there are any concerns with him serving as the interim executive director. I hope that those answers are to your satisfaction, and thank you so much for raising those concerns with us.
I'd just like to say that we have concerns because a lot of hires were made, with Anthony Arachi as the interim executive director. And we feel that the executive director should be the one making those hires.
I totally understand that, Gil, but as you know, the legislation, or for anyone that doesn't know, the legislation gives the commissioners authority to hire the executive director and the general counsel. The authority and ability to hire other individuals lies within the executive director. The legislation does not spell out or differentiate between the interim executive director versus the executive director. So thank you so much for those comments, Gil. I think that those are 3 minutes. If you have any other comments, though, please forward them to us. We love to engage with these discussions, and I can assure you that these are not things that we haven't discussed internally.
Right, thank you.
The next speaker I've registered, Jolly, is Marnie Kerr.
I don't see Marnie.
Good evening.
Yep, I see
Oh,
them.
hi, Marnie. Good evening.
Hi,
And I will say the same rules apply, Marnie.
my name is Margaret Kerr, and I'm a member of the Police Accountability Team at Power Live Free. I also have some questions regarding the interim executive director position. We're concerned because the interim executive director, Anthony Arachi, how was he able to hire a director of investigations before the commissioners hired an executive director? And it seems extremely problematic that Mr. Arachi hired an ex-police officer to investigate complaints against the police. Isn't that what CPOC is trying to avoid? Police investigating police. Did Mr. Arache consult with you, the commissioners, about hiring an ex-police officer to investigate police misconduct? As far as other roles on CPOC staff, we've seen a number of new people hired before the executive director has been hired. What role, if any, did you as commissioners have in the hiring of any of these positions and deciding which roles should be hired and are most important?
Hi, Marnie. As I mentioned, the legislation does give or vest with the executive director without the differentiation of interim executive director versus the permanent executive director. It gives them the ability to make those personnel hires. What I can say, regardless of who was hired for the position of director investigation, because there was only one caveat with the in the legislation. And I think there was something like the individual could not have been a member of the Philadelphia Police Department. So the current director of investigation, he does not have experience with the Philadelphia Police Department, but he did come from a different police department. But again, what I can say is regardless of who was in that position or how long they've been law enforcement, there are 9 people. There's myself and 8 other individuals that ultimately oversee what goes on with the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. Although the legislation does not spell out our authority to hire those positions, we do ultimately have the authority and the ability and the power vested in us to guide the direction of the executive director, as well as anyone and everyone else that works for the organization. If there are any other commissioners, and I don't want to take up.
I'd like to add something to that, if I may. Over the years, the Defender Association of Philadelphia has had an extremely strong professional investigative staff who've played a big role in the success of the Defender Association and in the reputation it earned locally and nationally. Most of those investigators were hired after having had training and experience in various police departments, including Philadelphia's, because we didn't have the provision that CPOC has. The idea, with all due respect, the idea that former police officers who are professionals at investigating can't do a good job of investigating either criminal charges brought about by police arrests or police misconduct just is not accurate. In fact, sometimes people with that training and a desire to do a good job are the best people for the job.
May I speak, Chairman Jolly?
Please, Rosario.
Thank you. I agree with my Commissioner Lerner, but to an extent, because I do have, and I understand Ms. Kerr and what she asks, when a police officer police themselves, yeah, our antenna goes up. That's the best way I can describe it. So yeah, we all feel exactly how you feel, Ms. Kerr. How can it be possible that we hire a police officer to do our investigation? And I greatly appreciate you bringing that up because we all feel exactly how you feel. We're wondering. So one of the things I've learned is to watch and to oversee exactly what they're doing. And as one of your commissioners here for the city, for CPOC, I am going to make sure that everything is done by every way, by the legislation, the new legislation. So thank you, Ms. Kerr, for bringing that up.
Thank you. I just want to make one point that there is nothing in the legislation for CPOC that mentions an interim executive director. And the question is, how did Anthony Arache become the interim director? Did you elect him? How did he become the interim director?
The last thing I'll say on this, Ms. Carr, is based on the time limit being up, is that we initially, once we were all seated as commissioners, we made a decision in order to be able to transition the staff from the Police Advisory Commission to the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. We agreed to transfer the staff in that capacity. So that's essentially my words, how Anthony became the interim executive director, as opposed to placing him as the executive director. So thank you so much. And again, as I mentioned previously, we love these comments, these questions, and this dialogue. So please feel free to continue to put information in the chat or reach out to us as you see fit. Danny, what's the next comment?
Next registered speaker is Michael Clemens.
Michael Clemens.
Right.
Hello, Michael.
Can you hear me?
I cannot hear you well.
Not, can you hear me now? Do I need to speak louder or, okay? Hi, my name is Michael Clemens, and I am co-chair of the Police Accountability Team at Power Live Free. I have some questions regarding the accountability structures for CPOC. Power Live Free wants the commissioners to ensure that CPOC staff is ultimately following the mandate of the legislation. You, the commissioners, are the ultimate governing body. We think, in the spirit of a Citizens Police Oversight Commission, and in our reading of the CPOC legislation, it is you, the commissioners, who would hold the CPOC staff accountable. This includes commissioners requiring full communication and transparency by the CPOC staff to make sure staff is adhering to the legislation and that CPOC is doing everything they are required to do. How do you, as commissioners, communicate directives to the CPOC staff and oversee the CPOC staff, including the interim executive director?
Thank you, Michael. I have no problem with answering that, but again, I want to open the floor to any fellow commissioners that want to chime in. Okay. The way we deal with that is, we communicate on a daily basis, honestly. We've established something for the executive. First of all, we communicate on a daily basis amongst ourselves, which also in turn means we communicate on a daily basis with the staff, including the executive director. We've come up with norms and guidelines, and we're in the process of working towards, I don't want to call it a job description, but for lack of a better term, kind of like a job description, expectations for whomever the permanent executive director is going to be. For instance, we have something where we have Monday morning updates regarding anything that went on the prior week, over the weekend, but then we rely on these public meetings, right? Because as part of being the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, it's only a certain amount of things that can go on without it's only a certain amount of things that can be done without being in the eye or view of the public. Certain things has to be done in the view of the public, which is why we have these meetings to discuss and have information sharing back and forth. But also in terms of as it relates to our expectations of the permanent executive director, as well as the interim executive director, for the staff in general, we collectively get together with one another. We often have healthy discourse, and based on 9 different individuals coming from 9 different places representing 9 different police districts, we oftentimes come up with what we think is going to be best for the community. And we disseminate that information, or we communicate it back and forth to the staff of CPOC. And then the other thing that I'll share is a lot of things that we do, it never meets the eye of the public. For instance, last week we met with Councilman Jones just to make sure that we had a proper understanding and are able to understand what our expectations are of the legislation, to make sure it coincides with the intent of the legislation, to then make sure that we're getting the most out of the staff and giving the most back to the community. That's my 3-minute timer, I'm sorry. But those are some of the ways that we make sure that we try to make sure the spirit of the legislation is carried out, but also making sure that the intent of it is carried out in addition with the will of the community. And I just want to reiterate it. I can't say it enough. The role that all 9 of us play in being able to come together and share information and bounce ideas off of one another. So it's not just any one person who's dominating anything. Thank you for that, Michael. Any other community comments or questions?
The next one is Stephen Strauss. He's in the ICE.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Stephen. Good evening.
Good evening. My name again is Stephen Strauss. I'm on the police accountability team of Power Live Free. And I have some questions regarding CPOC's plans. And these questions are, again, directed at the CPOC commissioners. First, the legislation is clear about what CPOC must do, but it's not entirely clear about how CPOC must do it. In order to build a commission that is accountable to the public and meets the requirements of the legislation, CPOC should have a transparent written plan that you can show constituents to demonstrate a reasoned, logically sequenced, integrated approach to meeting the requirements of the legislation. The detailed plan should be used to document accomplishments as they occur. This should include a hiring sequence, starting first with the hiring of a permanent executive director and then other roles needed as CPOC develops. B, goal-oriented tasks and responsibilities for every role that work toward building CPOC's capabilities. C, a training curriculum and training completion timelines for the commissioners and staff. D, an outline of technical, contractual, and administrative support systems to enable CPOC to function independently and to access Philadelphia Police Department data. 2, when will the commissioner share such a written plan with members of the public? Thank you.
Stephen, I don't know if you're in the market for a job, but you're hired. No, in all seriousness, I don't know if you've taken a look at the agenda, but we actually we met over the weekend, independent of our meeting with Councilman Jones. And we came up with a way to advance just that, what you said. And we actually, I believe in SMART goals. And one of the ways that I intend that we will advance our SMART goals is through committees. You know that sometimes things get murky when you have more heads involved, more chefs in the kitchen. So we're going to break it down, divide and conquer goals based on different committees, which we're actually going to discuss tonight. An HR committee, which will work on developing those things to disseminate those, finance budget committee, community outreach committee, and the communications committee. So you are, we're right there with you, Stephen. We understand those necessities. We're right there with you and we're striving to get those out. Hassan?
Okay.
I don't know if it's appropriate to share it with us, but
Then
I'm gonna do it anyway. How you doing today? Where is he at? I gotta find him again. I can't speak to me. Here we go. How you doing today, Stephen?
I'm fine.
So,
How are you?
so Stephen, we talked over the weekend, right? And one of the things we understood as commissioners, right, is that, okay, we can get the data. We can analyze police misconducts. We can do all that, but we are not as strong as we need to be without members of police accountability units throughout the city, right? So without your ear, without somebody's ear from the 19th district, without somebody's ear from the 18th district, 12th district, every city, every district within the city, without connections to those boards, we're not as strong as we should be as commissioners. So one of the things we were discussing is reaching out to you guys, having a member of the commission, whether it be broken down in the committees, how we decided. But one of those committees' obligation is going to be to reach out to the boards constantly to see what they see on the streets, compare it to what we're seeing on the streets, the data, and so forth and so on, to decide how we move further, or do we curb the plan for the future of CPOC? Does that answer your question?
I didn't get the last phrase, or do we curve the plan?
And when we talk about contacting you guys, everything you get, include everything we get from you guys, the data, the police misconduct, the neighborhood as a whole, when we do our outreach, will help us make the decision on what direction we want to go with, either changing policy or maintaining policy, trying to get different types of training for the police, for the department, the police department. So that was one of our initiatives we were sitting out, mapping out. The connection with PACs and what is these boards called? Civic boards, as well as community members.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Any other comments from any commissioners on that? Any other community comments in general, Danny?
Yep, there's two more that I have listed. So Marta Guttenberg is the next registered speaker. If you want to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and mention your police district, that'd be great.
Marta also is not here tonight. She was unavailable.
Okay, great. The next person would be Sylvia. Sylvia, if you'd like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and say what police district you're from, that'd be great.
Okay, hi everybody, board and staff and community people. My name is Sylvia Metzler, and I'm a member of the Police Accountability Team at Power Live Free. And I have some questions regarding CPOC's mission, and these questions are specifically for the staff. CPOC's legislation clearly lays out the mission of CPOC. It says, quote, "The commission is an oversight agency designed to ensure the just, transparent, and efficient administration of criminal justice in Philadelphia through fair and timely investigations into and oversight of conduct, policies, and practices of the police department and its officers." However, CPOC's website says, quote, "The mission of CPOC is to serve the community by helping to improve the relationship between the police and the community," unquote. And CPOC's Twitter and Facebook says, quote, "We are the civilian oversight agency for the Philadelphia Police Department," unquote. So we are very concerned that CPOC is misunderstanding and misrepresenting its mission by emphasizing improving relationships rather than oversight of police. So specifically, who is the webmaster and who developed the content on CPOC's website and social media? Who is responsible for the composition of the web page, especially the parts in direct contradiction to the legislation? When will the mission statement be changed on CPOC's website, social media, and all other places in order to make the mission as it's written in the legislation? Thank you. And that's for the staff, please.
Hi,
Yes,
Sylvia. So the answer is we already did it. It was a carryover from the old PAC mission statement on the website. And it was an error that honestly that I didn't realize it had occurred until one of our commissioners pointed it out. So we've been in contact with OIT to adjust the language to reflect what says in the legislation. And we did that a few weeks ago. I don't know if it's posted yet.
It is not, because the legislation is, so just so you understand, Sylvia, the city of Philadelphia, their goal for all writing on city websites is to be at a 6th grade reading level. And so because you can imagine that the legislation is written at like a law school level, when we sent them the request to change it, they said, hey, this is really high level language and it should be at a 6th grade reading level. Can you make it easier for accessibility. So we asked for them to send us some new language to propose to our commissioners, and then they'll vote on that. I think with the thing Jali mentioned earlier of them meeting to talk about mission, that'll probably help also steer what goes on the website.
Well, I can see the sense of having something, in words that are understandable, but I think the actual legislation should also be on that.
Yeah, the OIT person suggested that we do like a link that goes directly to the legislation that's like for more clarification and infos, and which we were like, yeah, that makes super sense when they gave us the feedback that the language was too advanced for the website.
And does the staff have a webmaster?
It's OIT that does it, but
OIT
that
has
runs
to
through
have everything
Danny.
on our website.
We both talked at once. Who's it, Danny?
It runs through, yeah, the webmaster is essentially is OIT, which is the city's like computer center. So, but changes are run like through Danny. Danny is the conduit through which changes flow.
Yeah, so like I have permissions to upload like the minutes to our website, like a document, but I can't edit any of the like actual pages. So we have to go through IT so that we make all the requests through them.
So when do you have a date, the actual accurate legislation, words of legislation will be on the website and the other social media?
Well, we're trying to reduce that so it can be posted on the website, and then the commissioners can vote on what it looks like. Because
okay, so you've been aware of this and you're working on it, and that's good to hear, because it's very important, because it's really not what the legislation says at this point, which is
agreed, Sylvie.
Okay, thank you.
Can I do a quick question?
Stephen, I would just ask you to wait, because there was someone in the chat that asked to speak. They emailed to speak. Citizen 1, do you still wish to comment?
Yes, thank you. Did nobody receive my email saying that I would like to speak?
I did, and I was about to say that you were the next person to speak, Citizen 1.
Okay, thank you.
You're the last to register today.
Which brings up my comment, and I don't want to just load upon the interim executive director. I think that there are issues within the entirety of the staff at the CPOC. I have been publicly doxxed by one of these CPOC members, and as a person who was speaking about being a survivor of sexual assault and trying to report it to the police, the fact that they said my name out loud on a live publication that millions of people can view was appalling and upsetting to me. I tried reaching out to the CPOC interim director, and I received no comment back from him about what is going to be done in the future when that behavior is made. Not only that, but they have blocked me from meetings, blocked me from Facebook, blocked me from speaking. They have disconnected me from Zoom meetings. And all I've ever done is send in reports about police officers who have broken the law, violated the law, had officers who were caught live on video stealing from the city. I don't understand why they think I'm the bad guy here. It has been 2.5 years since I reported to the police department about a sexual assault. Instead of them contacting SVU, that officer called a friend who was affiliated with the rapist and sexual assaulter, gave him all of my information, and that person called me and threatened me. I do not understand how the CPOC thinks that there was nothing wrong, because I got a letter saying internal affairs saw nothing wrong. When I tried to figure out how to go to the CAP meeting at City Hall, I was met with indifference and very egregious threats of violence to be arrested if I showed up at City Hall. If we look at the Facebook page, and if you notice the next meeting that they're having in City Hall for police accountability, if you are not accepted by them to come in, then you are stuck at the gate and they use the police against you to disallow you to be a participant in these meetings. I find it egregious when somebody has a job position that job is obsolete. I don't understand how that person can then be moved over into a new job position. I don't understand how anybody would think that a person who is a member of the FOP or a member of any of these other unions would hold the interest of citizens first. Brotherhood is brotherhood. Thin blue line is the thin blue line. Which brings me to the top cop, the Attorney General, which is what Eric was. So we have a person who was a top cop in Pennsylvania. I don't know if he's a member of the FOP. I don't know what type of money he's still getting from them, but I find it a huge conflict of interest. And I really hope you start looking into this, because I'll put this on the table. If that officer did that to me, how many other women do you think in Philadelphia received that same type of treatment? Thank you.
So,
Thank you for
go
your
ahead,
comment.
Jolly. Yeah.
I was just going to say, citizen, go ahead, Afroja, if you had a response. I just want to say I'm sorry to hear that you went through that, and thank you for your comments.
Yeah, I would reiterate the chair. I'm so sorry that's happened to you and that's been your experience. That sounds really traumatic, and we are so sorry to hear that. There were several questions in what you had to say, so if I can remember them, I will try to address them, and correct me if I'm wrong along the way. We do have 3 minutes, so I'll be aware of the time as well. So you said that you had been doxxed by one of the staff. I think that was a mistake. The staff had spoken accidentally, and you were certainly not doxxed. They apologized profusely, and
No, she
we
did not
all had.
apologize. I have to stop you right there. She did not apologize.
She did.
Not.
Okay. If I may continue with the other parts of your questions.
Right after she called out my name, she blocked me from that meeting.
When we have these public meetings, if there's a disruptor, our staff's job is to make sure that everybody who wants to be heard is heard and allotted their 3 minutes to speak. And then if there's still a disruption, we want to be respectful of everybody's time who's attending so that we can hear everybody's voice. And again, I'm so sorry that you have experienced this. Your complaint has been registered, and once CPOC starts formally investigating, I am sure it will be looked at. It has not been forgotten. It has been spoken of. The staff are aware, the commissioners are all aware that this is something that has come up, that you have lodged a complaint. We as CPOC, as an agency, cannot speak for the FOP, obviously, or the PPD or what they do. So some of the things that you had to say, I don't think those are things that CPOC can answer to, but we're happy to help you in any way we can, just like we're here to help every resident of Philadelphia.
Thank you. Citizen one, the last thing that I'll say, again, thank you so much. And I'm sorry to hear that you went through that. First, I don't want you to construe what was just said to be intended to say that you were a disruptor. The other thing that I want you to know and understand is that there is a director of investigations, and we do have the authority, and we actually have started doing investigations, and with the intent to build out, we will have individuals that will hopefully be able to handle those types of investigations as well. I do see 2 hands, but in the interest of time, because there are some other things that we want to get through, unless your questions are quick, I don't know if we heard from Lynette. And then also, please just keep in mind that the questions ordinarily are fielded in advance so that we are able to know how much time to allot for each citizen. Lynette, I don't think you've spoken before. If you would like to speak, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And I'm not sure that we'll be able to get responses to you. Lynette, if you would like to.
Yes, my name is pronounced Leonette, but thank you so much.
I apologize, Leonette. I'm
It's all-
dyslexic.
It's okay. First, I want to say thank you all so much for all you do. I did put a few things in the chat. Not sure if you had an opportunity to look at it, but I am a product of the 18th and the 19th police district. So one of the things that, I want to see is more postings on the social media pages of how citizens can report police complaints, because a lot of constituents don't know, and excuse the bikes in the background, a lot of constituents don't know how to file a complaint. So if possible, I would like who's ever running the CPOC social media pages, please, this should be something that's posted weekly. This should be in every police station, just like everything else is posted around every police station. So these cases, like the one citizen just spoke of, can be talked about. And, I believe that's why CPOC was created, to give that, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess to give the unbiased, vote on how things should be handled with police misconduct. So I'm hoping that will be happening soon. And I'm hoping to see the data come out in the future with all the accomplishments that, these commissioners that were appointed, we want to see what was achieved. Thank you so much. That's it for today.
Thank you, Leonette. Susan, that'll be the last comment. We can't hear you.
Okay, now?
Yes.
Susan Thompson, and I wanted to reiterate my question from last time. I asked about the follow-up to any of the complaints that have been sent to CPOC, and you told me that there's a time first that the internal affairs have to review it, and then you have so many days, maybe 90, I don't remember. Where is this published, and where can you see when the complaint was lodged or to you, when it went to internal affairs, what the solution was from internal affairs or what the finding was, and when does it go back to CPOC? I think that needs to be transparent. You told me it was like a month or two or something, or maybe longer. It's already been months that I've asked that. Could you answer that, please? And where's this timeline?
Susan, thank you for your comment. At this point in time, I'm going to close the floor for questions or comments. I'm going to close the floor for questions or comments, but Susan, I did note your concern right there. Perhaps our executive director will touch on it as we go through the executive director report. If not, I'm pretty sure, if not, we will have an update for you. If you don't mind dropping your email in the chat, we could also give you an update prior to the next meeting, or you'll have an update at the next meeting. Thank you.
Oh, I apologize, Ms. Thompson.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Rosaura.
I wanted to do a public vote, and I thought you may allow me to speak on it.
I don't have to allow you. You're a commissioner,
Okay.
just like I am.
So as I am, because of what has been transparent, what has happened recently, and I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but I am nominating Hassan as our co-chairperson. So I don't know if the other the other 7 commissioners feel the same.
So Rosaura, what I'll do is I interpret that as Rosaura has a motion.
Yes.
For Hassan to be the vice chair.
Yes.
Now, in order for that to move forward, someone will have to second that. Or it can be further discussed in executive session. All right.
I thought we did discuss this, and Elder Melanie made some very perceptive and, at least as far as I'm concerned, persuasive comments about this issue.
Okay, thank you for that, Judge. What I'm going to ask at this point, though, based on those two different viewpoints in Rosario's motion, I'm going to ask that this be further discussed in executive session. Are any commissioners opposed to that? Hearing no, we'll save that for executive session. I'm sorry. Thank you, Rosario. Anthony, are you prepared to give your report?
Yes, Chair. Danny, can we share the screen and you'll work the slides? Danny, are you ready?
Yeah, sorry, hold
Oh,
on.
okay.
The PowerPoint's not sharing properly. Let me just.
Tonight's player profile is presented by Woodbury Nissan. Yankee starter tonight, 30-year-old right-hander Domingo.
Apologies, it's being annoying.
His first start of the 2023 season. He left the Yankees with 18 wins in 2019. Entire 2020 season after violating MLB's domestic violence foul. He posted a 4.56 ERA in 2021, to a 3.61 ERA last season.
All right, here we go. Sorry, my computer is being very slow. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes. All right, everybody. So to begin the executive director's report, we'll start with complaint data. So far, we have had 30 complaints that were referred to internal affairs by CPOC this year, and 7 for the month of March. Now, this data is a breakdown of complaints referred to IAD, Internal Affairs Division, in calendar year 2023. So we have the first 2 pie charts show a breakdown of complaints by gender and race. So this is who is producing the complaints thus far this year. We will also forward a copy of this to the commissioners, and it'll be available online, obviously, on YouTube. So of the 30 complaints that we have referred this year, this is a breakdown of the nature of those complaints. So there's a couple of different ways we categorize these things, and you can see them there at the bottom, like civil rights complaints, EEO complaints, lack of service complaints, sexual misconduct complaints, and on and on. So our largest one was departmental violations, which are kind of like policy violations. So this is the breakdown of the complaints for this year. Next slide. All right, so now this is a map that shows you a breakdown of where complaints are happening. This is where we're drawing the complaints from, or where they're coming from. So you can see by zip code where sort of we're getting them. Now this, I know we're still early in the year, so this kind of map's going to mean more later, because then we'll have a better idea of sort of where the majority of them are coming from. Next slide.
I'm sorry,
this is an
Anthony, can you go back for a second?
Sure, Danny, go back one.
Thank you.
All right, so our auditing and monitoring unit, this is an update. So this is a list of projects that the unit and that the staff and director are working on, and they're in various stages of completion. So this is the active complaint monitoring proposal. And this is a build out for the auditing and monitoring unit where we're trying to create a tool and unit to walk cases and complainants through the complaint process and investigative process from start to finish when they're dealing with internal affairs. We also have the PBI Part 2 report, which our original PBI report was the one that resulted in the sort of transformative discipline change in PPD over the last 2 years. And this is Part 2. This is evaluating the progress and a few other additions and recommendations. We'll get a preliminary report to that once we're done the editing process to our commissioners to evaluate prior to release, obviously. There's also 2 body-worn camera projects that are just getting started. One is the body-worn camera compliance audit project, where we have auditors evaluating samples of body-worn camera footage, not necessarily of misconduct complaints, but just of body-worn camera footage to evaluate compliance, basically with internal policy. We also have a procedural justice body-worn camera project that's being done in concert with PPD and some academics. And that is essentially to try to analyze how police are dealing with the public based on the video of them dealing with the public. So are people treated justly procedurally, and what that means going through the project. So the next project is also a court time. This is an audit of how police officers are assigned court and how their time is sort of calculated in court, basically the whole process, because there's always been some concern about officers reporting for court and getting a lot of overtime for that kind of stuff. So we wanted to analyze it and see how it worked, why it worked that way, and how it could work better. Another fledgling project is Police Academy Review. This is an evaluation of training and education for police officers. And another thing that the auditing and monitoring had worked on is our annual report, which should be done soon. Also, in the course of that work, we are in the process of submitting a red flag letter. That's being done in concert with the policy unit. And that's basically if we see some pattern of conduct from a particular officer that's of concern, trying to alert police department administration that they might want to intervene, provide services or counseling, or we're not really sure. We're still developing it, but we did want to note that it was in process. Next slide. All right, so now, as we do the build out of the auditing and monitoring unit, we have to evaluate our progress as we go. So one of the things we're doing is sort of evaluating what we've done internally, right? So now you have auditors who are assigned to evaluate audits from other auditors, and that's to see if we're getting it consistently right. Like when we see the same things, are we reporting it the right way? Are we evaluating it the right way? So, and then we have new staff members are training on charging reviews. This is done currently by our director of audits, but it's going to be transferred, I think, to a senior policy person. And this is essentially, we have a CPOC staff member that oversees and evaluates and co-charges allegations of misconduct for presentation at the Police Board of Inquiry, which is the internal adjudication of misconduct cases. Incidentally, that's a huge reform from our original PBI report. So now, instead of just only a PPD member evaluating how misconduct is charged, you have a civilian that works with CPOC helping do that too. Next slide. Our policy unit has been trying to submit for innovation fund applications for primarily these reasons. So that we're trying to establish a community assistance program for assistance for residents who have reported a complaint against police, right? So, and that is essentially, and the idea there is that internal affairs can be difficult to get to, and there might be costs incurred for, if you have to get interviewed at internal affairs. We're trying to create a program that helps that helps make that process easier and reduce barriers, because we don't want cases, investigative cases, to fall by the wayside or be unproven because the bus ride was too long, or you couldn't afford to get there, or things of that nature. The other part of that is we want to help enable residents who have reported a crime but need the police report for whatever reason, be it their own personal reasons or to help, like for insurance, like if they've reported a car break-in. The process can be extremely cumbersome and expensive. And our idea there is to try to set up a system where we can, the cost of the reports are mandated by state law. So it's not, so Philadelphia can't waive them, but we're trying to create a program that allows people to get them faster and have funds to pay for them. So we're applying for those things to try to set up those programs. The next slide, please. All right, so our investigative unit, as everybody knows, we've hired a director of investigations, and that build out is and training is beginning. So that's our director has been learning the ins and outs of what CPOC does in our other units. We have a case management system that he's sort of learning in real time, and also he's going to be contributing to the investigative component of that tool. Being trained for a PBI to sit on the panel, policies and procedures, and is learning from NACOL on best policy and practices. We are also, he's also working with NACOL to help develop a training curriculum for new investigators once hopefully that build out occurs. Next slide. All right, our director of investigations has also begun in PPD high-level introductions with Deputy Commissioner Wimberly of the Internal Affairs Department, and sort of making inroads and ways to understand how they work, what they do, get training for CPOC investigators on how they're trained to do their job. And we also had an incident where he had to go and sort of review body-worn camera footage of a recent public incident. Also introductions to the PPD shooting team, learning how they do, what their rules are, what their manuals say, how to, so we can learn how they do what they do and why they do what they do, but evaluate it, learn from it, and then, create our own, hopefully, eventually. So he's also going to be shadowing with that unit. And that's the unit that investigates all officer-involved shootings of any kind. Next slide. Our community outreach unit we had 4 events this month that they attended: Inspiring Minds Youth Summit, our own community town hall, and Breaking Bread and Barriers conversations with women in policing, and also movie night and discussion with Picture Taker. This was last Friday, where we engaged the community and then have a discussion with community members about relevant police issues. Next slide. All right, and this is for our community outreach unit. This is our April schedule in case anyone would like to attend. We're going to be at the 19th district on April 7th for a youth entrepreneur pop-up shop and gun silence resource fair and flag football game. Our CPOC community meeting tentatively at the Marian Anderson Rec Center. We'll form that up and make sure the public is aware. April 25th, CPOC and outreach staff with community informed trauma training class. And April 29th, autism and law enforcement town hall with CPOC, PPD, Sheriff's Office, and CHOP. And that concludes the executive director's report for March.
Thank you, Anthony. One thing that I noted as far as questions in the or comments in the chat with the geographical map of Philadelphia, some folks, some comments were that the numbers did not add up. I did see a response from a staff member. Did you care to elaborate? They said looking at the map, it only adds up to, I think, 25.
Is this for me to elaborate on?
Yeah, go ahead, John. Go ahead,
sure.
John.
So this is using zip code data based on where all the complaints originated from. And I made this earlier today. 2 of the complaints were associated with, not with patrol officers, but with actual units. So for example, this was, I believe as Danny and I were discussing earlier, it was like the background investigation unit, which it's not really linked to a specific zip code. It would be in 19154, I imagine, where the the academy is, but it wouldn't really show where the spatial nature of misconduct from that.
Right.
And
So,
three of them,
when we don't have an incident in a zip code, there are going to be a few outliers. Like if somebody from Bucks County has a complaint, maybe like it's not.
which is what the other three were,
Right.
was for Bucks County. So
Right.
I have them captured, but I didn't want to put it in this map because it would make things very difficult to kind of get any meaningful information from.
Thanks, Josh.
Am I good to stop sharing, Jolly, or are there any other? You're muted, Jolly.
Yes, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners as it relates to the report? All right, I just one question or comment in the chat that I just seen was the name of the Director of Investigations. I believe he was previously on with us, Anthony, in the last meeting.
Yes, that's correct. Our Director of Investigations is Jameson Rogers.
All right, thank you. If there aren't any other questions or comments from any commissioners, we will move on. Anthony, does that conclude your report, or do you have an additional report?
That concludes the Executive Director's report, Chair.
Okay, we won't be here. We won't be hearing the budget report today.
We can do that right now if you'd like.
No, well, that's why I was asking if you had an additional report that you wanted to go through.
We're totally capable. Would you like me to start it now?
Yes. We'll just, and for purposes of this, we'll just do the budget report in this meeting, and we'll perhaps further discuss it in the executive session.
All right, Danny, can you cue that up for us?
Give me one, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I have to do it from the other computer, so give me 1 second.
Take your time, man.
While that's being queued up, if I can just take care of some business that I don't think will take long. As I mentioned, commissioners met in executive session over the weekend, and we came up with committees. I have a motion that the Citizens Police Oversight Committee, or particularly the commissioners, adopt the following committees: an HR committee, a finance/budget committee, a community outreach committee, and a communications committee.
Second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. And Elder Melanie, if you're in favor, give me a thumbs up. If not, thumbs down. Okay. Elder Melanie is in favor. And I did not see or hear from Afrosia. One second.
Hold on, Danny. Let the unshare so they can see.
Yeah, I didn't see or hear from Afrosia whether or not you were in favor of the committees or if you are abstaining.
I said aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anthony. We're prepared to move forward now.
Okay, Danny, you can share the screen. Okay, so this is the CPOC fiscal year 24. This is a potential budget proposal that will be, I guess, considered by the commissioners. This is, and we'll go through what we think is necessary to help execute the legislation for the next year, and the next phase for staffing up. In this first slide, this is our additional staffing request to help develop the different units that exist and the investigative division, which has just started to exist. This is a slide that shows the salaries, the proposed salaries for these, and all of the positions that we'll be asking for, or that we're considering asking for going forward. And again, the commissioners have copies of all of this, and this will obviously be available online for any member of the public that wishes to review it more thoroughly. All right, so the total budget increase is for $1,280,000, and 92% of that is for salaries, right? So the other part would be for maybe for rent or new office space, or to generally accommodate the new personnel, like where they would sit, how they're going to sit. Now, how that works out depends on a whole lot of things. Like, so it's so the number is sort of a nebulous cushion number that will allow us to do whatever it is that we need to do to support the office. And that could be less than that, obviously. The next slide. So now the auditing and monitoring unit, we're trying to get one auditor monitor position full time, and this is to help us execute the legislation as noted there. Next slide. Okay, so now the auditing and monitoring unit is important because this is the unit that has direct oversight over internal affairs, complaints, and investigations. So it's complaint monitoring, attending interviews, asking questions for investigations, and auditing, reviewing completed investigations for accuracy, completeness, and thoroughness. And right now, as we do the investigative build-out, and as they have been doing, these are the only ways CPOC. This is how CPOC is actually monitoring complaints and investigations in real time. So we actually have people that are looking at all internal affairs investigations, which is actually fairly unique in the country. Next slide, please. All right, so now with a full complement, or with 3 auditor monitors, we've been able to audit almost 400 cases, right? Which is 100% of closed cases for 6 months of 2022. And that was the focus of the unit, which means, monitoring didn't happen that much, and we're still developing that tool. So that's why we're trying to increase. So we're also developing it. As we develop these units, we're trying to evaluate in real time what makes sense. Like sometimes you feel like something's going to work, you try it, you see that you're more effective doing something else, right? So as an example, 100% of cases not statistically necessary. So a representative sample would yield similar results. And 100% of cases not the industry standards, but we were shooting high, and we wanted to see if that was best practices. So what we did find is that it's so labor intensive that it would really dominate most of the auditing function and wouldn't leave them enough to do like auditing of particular police department units or functions. Next slide. So now auditing and monitoring is super important because maintain quality and a sufficient quantity of complaint audits while also building a complaint monitoring program. Adding more staff for this allows the caseload to be spread out, which allows you to do better at your job. Right? If you're not completely overwhelmed all the time, you're obviously going to do a more thorough and better job. And it also will allow us to do more audit projects and large scale reviews, such as the one we started with the body worn compliance audit. Now that's going to be an example of what we can do across the department. We can do that for traffic stops. We'll be able to do that for really anything that the commissioners want to direct us towards or the community want to direct us towards. Next slide. All right, so for policy and research, so we want to add one policy analyst position, a data analyst specialist position, and a research specialist position. Now, this is really to expand our ability to affect policy and to assist in our public reporting requirement. Can we go to the next slide? All right, so policy unit, this is our sort of right now, as this is kind of this will be the hub of CPOC operations because it works with all other units and helps collate data into policy reports that can affect change with recommendations. So data and research specialists, they're going to be necessary because our reporting requirement is extensive, and we really need these people to analyze, because it's not just data, right? It's creating processes to collect it, cleaning it, analyzing it so it actually makes sense, right? Giant data dumps are frequently very difficult for professionals and the public to digest. And we're going to create something that that not only supports our auditing and monitoring and policy work and investigations, but it's going to allow the public, once we ramp this up, to view the data themselves and use it for whatever they want, right? So this is going to be a pretty special because this is the data part is a huge part of the legislation, and this is the first steps that we're going to be taking to hopefully execute it. Next slide. All right, so also why this is important. So CPOC has 18 months from the first group of commissioners seating to produce an annual report that complies with the legislation. So we're trying to get the data report and data report function out by October 2023. So you can see there from the bottom of the slide, some of the things that we're required to report and give you an idea of the work that we have to conduct. And here's a continued version of that. So again, all of these will be available online here, and our commissioners all have a copy for themselves. But as you can see by these two slides, the reporting requirement is fairly extensive. It's going to take an aggressive effort by CPOC to comply. Next slide. Okay, so adding more about why data and policy is important. So the data sets associated with each audit need to be released publicly on the website of the commission, but will be redacted, according to applicable law. So the data requests are an integral part of CPOC's work, and all data sets associated with all of the other work that we do, and not just data that comes from the police department, but data that we produce as we collect, as we conduct our work, will be reported as well. Community outreach, training, and engagement. All right, so now we're really trying to ramp this up, because while we are 1,000% better than what the old PAC was, what we recognize is that we have to be in more places, and we have to be able to support our commissioners in more places. So it'll be easier for us to support the commissioners' projects and needs in their districts and neighborhoods, and it'll be easier for us to serve the diverse set of residents that Philadelphia has. So we're going to try to get three community outreach and constituent services positions, one complaint manager position, and one complaint intake specialist position. Now, those two bottom ones are separate, right? So the three community outreach, they're going to be the people on the ground serving the commissioner's will in different neighborhoods, and doing things like you saw in the executive director's report, like those tabling places, holding meetings, doing movie and discussion nights, basically trying to get the community involved with community police oversight. So the complaint manager position, go back one second. I want to say something about the CPOC's required to be sort of the hub of the wheel for community complaints. So now what we do now is we take complaints that come through us, but that's only a very small part of of the complaints that go through the police department in a year. So what the legislation requires is that we sort of house all of them. Now this is so we need these two positions, because generally between internals and citizen complaints, there's between 800 and 1,200 complaints against police a year, right? So we need people that can do that are going to be these are full-time positions to handle that kind of volume. They'll eventually be able to draw the complaints that CPOCs will eventually at some point investigate themselves, note the ones that go to internal affairs, and basically it's going to be the hub of the wheel for all police complaints. We're going to be essentially performing a function that internal affairs largely performs now, and make sure that both internal affairs and CPOC investigations are functioning normally, right? Like, so they're not co-investigating, so they're not parallel investigating. So what's going there is there, what's going here is here, and it's going to create those processes. So we can do the next slide. Right. All right, so now for this unit, our community outreach unit is so important, because while we've done a lot, we haven't done near enough yet, and this is the next phase of build out. So we really want to be everywhere, and we want everyone to have access to CPOC, and want our roundtables and town halls and community meetings. We want all of this stuff to be able to expand and also support the commissioner's projects. All right, next slide. Now, this slide talks about what sort of how expanding this unit and why it's valuable. So basically, the complaint intake process has to be more accessible to various communities. So we want to be able, our community outreach wants to be able to engage people from all across the city, from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, and try to and make it safe for them to interact with us and voice their concerns and get complaints to investigated that maybe never would have been reported. Increasing our capacity for youth engagement, increasing our community partnerships, hear directly from diverse communities, and tailor outreach and training efforts to suit the needs of the community and not just what we think they should have. And this is where, you know, our commissioners are going to be integral in this process, regardless. Next slide. All right, so now our investigations unit request. Now this is going to be sort of our biggest and our biggest build out, hopefully. So this is where CPOC begins to be able to address specific incidents and larger incidents for both. Initially, our build out is to, the idea is to train and create investigative capacity. Now the initial plan was that we would be able to do sort of what we call NTSB style investigations and incident investigations. And this is part of the buildup where we're creating an investigative capacity and profile of skill that is evident, right? So misconduct investigations will down the road at some point follow, but we're trying to create and really build out a high quality, talented investigative body. Part of this, we included a couple other positions that'll be separate, and those are the administrative prosecutor positions. Now, that's part of the legislation where they will be prosecutors in our office that work within the police discipline system that help put on the cases. Can we do the next slide? I think there's more on there. Right. So these are some of the responsibilities of investigations, but our administrative prosecution right now, you have in the police discipline process, you have one department advocate who's doing their best to do as much as they can, but they're overwhelmed by volume. So if we add two civilian prosecutors, one, you get legitimacy to the process where you don't have a member of the FOP helping prosecute members of the FOP. You have, members of CPOC who are presenting and putting on cases. So you're basically adding a civilianization component to something that was isolated within an FOP member function. So it's revolutionary, honestly, and the legislation thankfully includes this possibility, and we negotiated for it in the last police contract. So it's something that should not get really any pushback. All right, next slide. All right, so this is more on how our investigative unit needs to be built out and why it's important. So the idea there with the investigation unit is that the public historically does not believe and does not consider legitimate the police sort of having total dominion over internal investigations. And this allows a citizen-driven unit to basically investigate incidents, allegations, and misconduct. This build out is going to be incredibly important because it's going to be hopefully the flagship unit of CPOC and the driver of public confidence or eventual public confidence, that if you make a complaint and the allegation can be sustained, that it will be, and it's going to go through a process that you can believe in. And this is kind of part of that. Next slide. All right, so now this is just more sort of what I'm talking about, but written down for everyone to read. This is going to be a big deal, right? So like really creating a high quality investigative team is going to allow the legitimacy, transparency, and basically what we want to be, we want investigations to be as effective, right? One of the biggest complaints between from residents and citizens are that if you complain, it takes forever for it to happen, and then you get to a forum and you lose. Our idea is to present better cases in a legitimate forum, so when you go through a process, you can believe it. And we have very high aims for this unit. And this goes to what I was speaking of before with the administrative prosecution unit. They're going to do other things other than just prosecuting cases. This is basically the federal investigation model, right? Where you have a lawyer and a prosecutor who is not only prosecuting the case, but also help guiding an investigation, right? So now if you bring a case and you bring it to the person that's going to present it, they're going to tell you, because they know the forum, I wish there was more of this. I wish there was less of this. I wish this part was stronger. And this is something that doesn't really happen now, right? So when in internal affairs, you get what you get, and that's it. And the advocate goes with it. This is creating a process that allows collaboration and sort of tailoring a case. So we're doing the best we can in the forum that we have, right? So this is essentially based on the United States Attorney model, prosecution model. Next slide. Okay, so now this is budget stuff that's beyond staff requests, which is 8% of what the total budget ask is, right? So now legal services, this is a cushion for when we eventually get a general counsel. Should they need other tools to execute their function, right? So if they're doing something and they need to spend money on it, like if they need to hire I don't know, some more legal advice, or really anything, right? So now 20,000 for case management services. This is going to be an addition to our case management system that will allow the investigations unit to develop in that system. So 100,000 for professional services. This is for training, seminars for commissioners and staff for any trainings or seminars or commissioners payment, data software, membership fees for like NACOL. And this is also where commissioner stipends are drawn from. 30,000 is for materials and supplies. And this is pens and staplers and pads and things that staff will need to perform the functions of their job. There's we mentioned earlier, $100,000 for also cushion funding to potentially accommodate the larger staff. $135,000 is for expansion. In order to function for basically desks, chairs, that's far more expensive than most people realize. We're in the process of doing that now, and it's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, it's crazy, but we have to go through the city contracting process. So and it doesn't mean the fact that we are asking for these particular allocations doesn't mean we are going to spend all of it. It just means that we're trying to have enough for so if we need these things, we have a ballpark, but we obviously will be as frugal as humanly possible because it is taxpayer. It's not like we're getting captain's chairs or anything like that. Yeah. All right, so that is our presentation on the budget, and I think that's it.
Anthony, thank you so much for that presentation. Any commissioners have any questions, comments, or concerns at this point?
Yeah, I also noticed that it came up, I think in the chat, but my question was in regards to procurement. Are we supposed to, under the umbrella of the city, also use the same vendors for furniture?
Yes, sort of. All of these things would have to go through the procurement department. So like sometimes if you're making a request, for example, they'll say, oh, we have a vendor for that. We have a pre-existing vendor for that in a contract. Other times, depending on what you need, they'll say, oh, we have to bid it out, right? Like, or yeah, so there's
depending on the amount. I'm familiar with that process.
The answer is it depends, but yeah.
Okay.
Anthony,
yes, sir.
How many, refresh me my recollection, how many prosecutors are you asking for in this budget?
2
to start off.
Yes,
to start off with.
Yeah, and the idea there is that we know they have the volume to support 2. We're not sure if it's going to work out where it's running really smoothly and 2 is good, or we might need more. So that we wanted to hold.
Well, I think it's good, very good to start really with a small number there, because I don't think we know yet how the choice that the legislation gives the commission choice in each case as to whether to conduct its own investigation and prosecution, or whether to participate fully in the Internal Affairs Division prosecution. And except for some of the most serious, but hopefully least frequent cases, we really don't know how much we would need, how many prosecutors we would need eventually.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why we're starting with this number. And then because we know we're pretty sure we have enough work, right? Like for this to contribute to investigations and prosecutions. But as the commissioners develop their policies and protocols going forward, they'll be able to also support that mission. And then of course, later we can always add if the workload necessitates it.
Have you had any discussions with the police department about how a joint prosecution involving them and us might unfold, or whether it ever would unfold without us going to court and beating back their challenge to it?
Yes, that part is actually, we negotiated that in the last FOP contract. So, and the police department is aware of that. So now the form and function of how it works, we have to see if we're approved for the positions. We have to see if we're going to be hiring for them. But the form and function, like the nuts and bolts of who gets what and where and how it works, we still have to work out. But they've been very amenable to this process so far, and they know that that's coming in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Anthony. At this point in time, I previously mentioned on the state of the executive director search. Anyone on the general counsel search committee have any updates?
Yes. So we have finished the first round of interviews for our general counsel, and we are going to be conducting the final round of interviews. We have 2 final candidates, and we'll be interviewing them within 2 weeks, after which we will be presenting our recommendation to the entire commission. We can have a public meeting for that if that is something that we want to do, and the commissioners can all vote on that. And then shortly after that, hopefully the timeline we're looking at is by April 16th or 17th, we will have a general counsel.
Thank you. At this point in time, that's all of the agenda items for the public meeting. Can someone make a motion to go into executive